The following is produced by 5 Star Productions USA, which is solely responsible for its editorial content and is sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.
For every action we take around our homes and offices, there is an environmental consequence. We need to take control of our daily living habits and understand their potential long-term effects on our Earth. How and when we make our environmental choices will impact all of our lives. I'm Ed Begley, Jr. Join me this week as today's environment continues its exploration of how all of us can make a difference.
Today, City Council
reducing
9,000
reducing air
supermarkets
pollutants by
recycling a milestone
80%.
in environmental
Educational programs.
All of us are used to flicking a switch or turning a dial to control the temperature in our homes. But did you know that about 50% of our total home energy costs are just for heating and cooling? Try setting your thermostat to a daytime heating temperature of only 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Not only will this save you money, but it'll also conserve our natural resources. Next up, another company with a sound environmental practice.
Millions of years ago, a natural process was started that converted organic materials like dead trees and plants into carbon. Buried by the sands of time, it was placed under tremendous pressure and heat deep within the earth to form coal. Today, it's being mined to help meet our ever-growing energy needs. But like our supply of all fossil fuels, it's not unlimited and must be conserved. In addition, there is a need to protect our environment and to find better ways to deal with some serious problems. Among them is the damage being caused by the way we dispose of garbage, in incinerators when we burn it, or placing it in municipal landfills, which produces leachate, a toxic substance created when water filters through the waste. In addition, as local landfills close, municipalities are faced with a dilemma. They can either transport the garbage to distant locations where it's not always welcome, or build new incinerators, something that's not very popular since no one wants one in their backyard. Indeed, these are controversial and complex problems, and although they're being addressed by many different companies, up until now, the solutions have all been directed at one obstacle at a time. However, we visited a company that has come up with a universal solution to all of these problems. Thermoselect, with offices in Troy, Michigan, has a full-scale demonstration plant in operation in northern Italy. It treats a mixed stream of solid and liquid waste materials, domestic garbage, commercial wastes, sewage sludge, and even old household appliances are accepted. What makes this plant unique is that it has no smokestacks and no ash or water effluent to dispose of. It's a closed-loop process. The plant produces energy-rich gas to meet its internal needs, electricity and steam from surplus gas, and a number of high-grade recovered raw materials for making useful products. Located on 5 acres of landscaped property, the plant looks like a modern industrial manufacturing facility. Even more surprising, it operates with little noise and is dust and odor-free. Its designers felt that for them to succeed, they had to build an environmentally safe and friendly facility. In fact, the strategy was to design and size the plant so that it easily blends into the community. Before we get into the details of how it operates, let's take a moment to look at the conventional ways garbage is being processed today. By far, the cheapest method for disposing of refuse has been to dump it in a landfill, regardless of the environmental impact. Although there have been some recent improvements in their design, landfills are still nothing more than places to hide the things we no longer want to see. Incineration is also a common method of dealing with our waste. One advantage over landfilling is that incinerators reduce the volume of material. However, the resulting ash is judged by many to be harmful and must still be landfilled. In addition, there is growing controversy and concern over smoke and gases that are released into the atmosphere by the incineration process. Recently, there has been a lot of interest in recycling. It begins when individual households participate in curbside separation or use central drop-off points for newspapers, aluminum cans, and plastic containers. But even with public support, many recycling efforts have run into trouble because they are not cost-effective. In some cases, the supply of recovered materials is actually outpacing the demand for the recycled products. For example, occasionally old newspapers are warehoused in anticipation of higher prices. The mere act of throwing something in a recycling bin is no better than putting it in a landfill if it's not used again. There's also the issue of quality or purity of the recovered materials. Now let's go back to the Thermoselect plant to see how its process deals with these problems. First of all, it's a closed-loop system, and everything that goes into it comes out as something useful. There is no air pollution or odors, processed water is totally recovered, and there is no ash to dispose of afterwards. With a mixture of waste materials from a typical community, three things come out of the process: energy-rich gas to fuel the continuous operation of the plant, a non-toxic glass-like material with many uses, and a number of contaminant-free metals in the form of small pellets. Trucks arriving at the facility are weighed in before they dump their load into an enclosed steel-lined pit. A large overhead crane, which runs on tracks above the pit, moves the waste to a powerful compactor. Here, the material is crushed under 1,000 tons of pressure to reduce its volume by as much as 90%. This forms a plug measuring 3 feet square by 9 feet long. Compressing the waste also removes much of the air, which, if left, would promote combustion. That's something the process doesn't need at this stage. The plug is then pushed into a tunnel where it's in direct contact with the walls and is heated to over 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. During this time, all liquids are vaporized, and the organic materials are converted to energy-rich carbon in much the same way as Mother Nature makes coal. The glass and metals in the waste stream are left embedded in the carbon. As the plug moves out of the tunnel, it enters a chamber where oxygen is introduced and allowed to contact the carbon. This raises the temperature to over 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. The high temperature destroys all complex organic chemicals. It forms a valuable energy-rich gas, and it melts the metal and glass portion of the carbonized waste. By shock cooling the gas down to below 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the formation of toxic pollutants such as dioxins and furans are prevented. After cleaning, the recovered gas is used as fuel to continue the process. The surplus gas can also be used to make steam or electricity, which can be sold to local industries. Depending on the intended end use of the material, other processing can occur. For example, the recovered metal pellets are ready for use in new metal products. Likewise, the glass can be cast into various forms, including decorative bricks, or spun into fibers, having excellent heat insulating properties. This process represents a major leap forward in solving a number of problems plaguing our environment today. By combining several proven chemical processes in a state-of-the-art plant, Thermoselect is reducing our waste and converting it to energy, recovering a number of high-grade materials, and recycling the usable material into useful products.
Next time you go to pay your electric bill, I want you to think of this. On the average, lighting your home accounts for 16% of this monthly expense. Consider buying compact fluorescent bulbs the next time you're shopping for replacements. They are 4 times more efficient than incandescent bulbs, they last longer, and you'll be doing your part to conserve our natural resources. Now this.
Certain kinds of pollution are obvious even to the most casual observer. However, some substances are so lethal that even small amounts pose a hazard. For example, dioxins and furans, 2 closely related groups of chemicals, include what some experts believe to be the most toxic substances known to man. When scientists test for the presence of these potentially cancer-causing chemicals, it can't be done by simply holding a glass of water up to the light or sifting through a soil sample by hand. Instead, a mass spectrometer, which can detect contamination levels in soil down to less than 1 part per trillion, is needed. To put this into perspective, imagine trying to find 1 grain of black sand somewhere in a half-inch thick layer of sugar, covering an area the size of a football field. Coast-to-Coast Analytical Services in Indianapolis, Indiana, is one of the few laboratories in the country that has the capability to do this kind of environmental testing. This lab specializes in dioxin and furan analysis using state-of-the-art instrumentation and EPA methods. They also can test for volatile organics, pesticides, and metals in accordance with various state and federal agency regulations. Typically, their customers are companies that do cleanup work at Superfund sites and industrial plants where the presence of dangerous chemicals is suspected. To see how the testing process works, let's follow a sample through the lab. Upon receipt of the material, it's logged in and a chain of custody documents signed. The sample is then transferred to the preparation lab where a known chemical is added to provide a benchmark for calibration purposes. Since the mass spectrometer cannot accept the water or soil samples directly, they must be processed to produce an easily vaporized extract. After a thorough cleaning to remove the chemicals that are of no interest for the particular test, a very small amount is injected into the spectrometer using a robot-controlled syringe. The extract is then heated to separate it into its component parts in what could be thought of as a miniature refinery made out of a 60-meter-long hollow coil. The separated chemicals are then passed through a series of chambers where they are exposed to a strong electron beam and magnetic fields. Here, the ionized particles are counted as they pass through this high-tech filter. Since each element has a known atomic weight, the type and amount of each chemical present can be determined very accurately. Under control of a computer, the mass spectrometer creates graphs called chromatograms, which show the unique fingerprint associated with each substance. The data is also organized into computer files, which are printed out in report form by the analyst. In the final steps, the laboratory manager and quality control officer review these reports before they're released to the client. Depending on the number of samples submitted and other factors, the whole process can take from 14 to 30 days. However, some tests can be completed in as little as 48 hours. This short turnaround time is particularly important to companies that have expensive equipment sitting at a site waiting to find out if the job is finished. And by saving time in the field, more money is made available for solving other environmental problems.
Now here's another home energy saving. In the summer months when your air conditioner is on, set the thermostat to 78 degrees Fahrenheit or higher. Each 1 degree higher setting will save 3% on your energy bill. Also, consider a programmable thermostat. It will allow you to maximize your savings by only using energy when it's needed most. Let's take a look at someone else whose efforts are making a positive difference.
This 160-acre farm in Iowa looks pretty much like other working farms in the center of America's breadbasket. Located in the south-central drift plain region, it's characterized by gentle rolling hills. Just like on neighboring farms, crops are planted and harvested, but that's where the similarity stops. Because here at the Edith Angel Environmental Research Center, knowledge is what scientists and researchers are trying to cultivate. The center is named after Edith Angel, the former owner of the property. It was her wish that the land be used to protect the wildlife that she loved. Fittingly, the center's goal is to demonstrate and encourage land management programs which improve soil, water, and wildlife conservation. Wildlife thrive in and around this farm run by TIWET, the Institute of Wildlife and Environmental Toxicology at Clemson University. The concept of developing this research center grew out of American Cyanamid's need to conduct avian field studies. In this cooperative venture between the university, the agricultural chemical industry, the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, local farmers, and student fellowship support from the National Wildlife Federation, answers to some tough questions are being sought. For example, what are some of the effects of certain products on free-ranging wildlife, and how can they be reduced? One of the first projects taken on by the center was to scientifically study Counter, a rootworm insecticide for corn, on wildlife habitat.
We are now establishing a forum where science can be used to prove or disprove the injury risk of agricultural chemicals on wildlife.
This multi-year field study produced a wealth of valuable information. The results are now being used internationally by policymakers in efforts to maintain environmental quality in agricultural ecosystems. Farmers have known for a long time what the benefits of these agricultural products are. But thanks to the efforts of people like Jay Hare, president of the National Wildlife Federation, there is a growing awareness that their environmental effects must also be considered. In another planned field study, researchers at the center will be looking at the response of bobwhite quail and other avian species to field border management. A similar study in Great Britain found that by not spraying herbicides in a narrow border around a grain field, there was minimal loss in yield. But the nearby wildlife habitat was protected from herbicide drift and runoff into surface and groundwater. Based on this study, the researchers at the center hope to expand their understanding of how agricultural and environmental interests can coexist. Dr. Ronald J. Kendall, TIWET Director and President of the Society of Environmental and Chemistry, believes that industry, academia, and environmental groups can and must work together as a team to find solutions. Through the work of the Edith Angel Environmental Research Center, people from all sectors are beginning to realize that by working together, it's a win-win situation.
Weatherproofing. It's not just for cold climates, you know. Each year, the amount of energy that leaks from our homes equals the amount of oil that flows through the Alaska pipeline. By adding extra insulation, caulking, and weather stripping, you will conserve energy and save on your monthly utility bill as well. Let's look at someone else's contribution.
For decades, lead-acid batteries have proven themselves to be a reliable source of renewable power for starting cars, trucks, and boats, and to run vehicles like forklifts and golf carts. However, since they use sulfuric acid as an electrolyte, there is always the danger of spilling this hazardous liquid. For applications where safety and portability are important, NiCad batteries and other exotic types have found wide acceptance during recent years. Unfortunately, they're expensive and difficult or impossible to recycle. East Penn Manufacturing, one of the nation's most companies, has found a solution to these problems. Using licensed technology developed in Germany and their own patented process, they've eliminated the spill hazard in recyclable lead-acid batteries. These new power sources, which use a gelled electrolyte, can not only be used in automobiles, but have many uses such as in emergency lighting, computer backup, and portable medical equipment. Using computer-aided manufacturing techniques developed by their people, the company reclaims about 20,000 old batteries every day. The sulfuric acid is collected, refined, and then made into a gelled electrolyte using computer-aided techniques. This substance has the consistency of thick petroleum jelly and will not spill. Gel also eliminates the need for maintenance, since the electrolyte is contained in the sealed case. In another part of the recycling operation, are sawed off and the old batteries tumbled together until they're broken apart. This separates the lead plates and plastic casings and traps any dust. The scrap lead is automatically fed into a computer-controlled furnace where it is melted into bullion and then refined in 75-ton kettles. The processed lead, now in bar form, is then used to make new batteries. Similarly, the used plastic chunks are cleaned, ground, and remolded into new cases and covers. The lead dust, which is collected during the process, is also recycled in the closed-loop system. Even the sulfur fumes from the smelting operation are trapped and processed into liquid fertilizer in another unique operation. One of the advantages of gelled electrolyte batteries is that they can be used in any position. They also have a long shelf life and readily accept a charge. This state-of-the-art manufacturing complex is indeed a good example of how recycling technology can be applied to solving difficult problems. What could be a threat to the environment if thrown away is now a valuable resource for making a product that is meeting our ever-growing need for portable electric power.
Light switches. Another area most of us don't give any thought to are these little devices we use tens of times every day, the office and especially at home. First, always remember, a flick of the switch when you're leaving a room conserves energy. And if you use dimmers, you can fine-tune your savings even more. Here's someone else's problem-solving solution.
Have you ever seen a truck being unloaded at a supermarket and wondered what happens to all of those wooden shipping pallets? When we looked into this, we discovered that there are about 100 million of them being used in the United States by the grocery industry alone. Each year, over 66 million of these are replaced because they are no longer serviceable. Without exception, all of these wind up in landfills. But that's only half of the problem. It takes about 14 board feet of lumber to build a pallet, which translates to a whopping 924 million board feet of lumber a year that could be conserved or put to better use. How did this problem get so big? Well, aside from the growing demand to ship more products to market, it started to get out of hand about 20 years ago when the nationwide pallet exchange program was introduced. Under this system, dealers are required to return the same number of pallets to the manufacturer after they receive a shipment. However, although a new one might be sent to the distributor, the replacement could come back in need of repair. In short, the old system offered no incentive for anyone to buy pallets that would last beyond a few uses. As a result, 75% of those in use are substandard. CHEP, a company with international roots, has come up with a better method of dealing with this problem. Modeled after its overseas operations, it established a pallet pool with depots in strategic locations nationally. Rather than sell the pallets, CHEP rents them for use by manufacturers and their distributors. Since they own the pallets, they have a vested interest in keeping them in first-class condition. CHEP does this by building a stronger and better pallet, one with four-way access making it easier to handle, and by providing the required maintenance to make them last longer. The company is proud of the fact that they have never thrown one away. Instead, when they're no longer usable, the lumber is recycled for use as fuel or ground into mulch. In addition to the environmental benefits, there are other economic benefits. Campbell Soup conducted tests and found product damage costs were significantly reduced with improved pallets. Industry-wide, this translates into a $500 million savings per year. The success of the program is attributed to early participation by major companies like Lever Brothers, Procter & Gamble, and Gerber Foods. Over 1,000 distributors already like the program, as do the trucking firms. For example, an estimated $450 million, including a lot of fuel, can be saved by the trucking industry now that they don't have to drive unproductive miles to locate and dispose of pallets. Managing this distribution and return system is a big job, but it has been automated and simplified with computers. Through efficient management and control of the and by providing close support from its service teams, the company is able to meet the needs of the grocery industry. Looking to the future, CHEP is working with the manufacturers and distributors to develop alternative materials and designs to make their pallets even friendlier to the environment.
Remember, all of us can prevent environmental abuse. We make choices every day, whether at home or at work. Let's use our conscience to influence ourselves and those around us. Not only do these decisions add up to cost savings, but they become planet savers as well. I'm Ed Begley, Jr. Join me next week as we continue to explore more environmental solutions on today's environment.
If you know of any interesting environmental success stories, call us at 407-997-9800. This has been a presentation of 5 Star Productions USA. The preceding program was sponsored in part by a grant from Paul Mitchell Salon Hair Care.